All right. We got the normal cast here, but Chris is feeling a little bit froggy wearing the cowboy hat. PG is in the building. Drew's here. Guys, playoffs were unbelievable this weekend. That was insane. And we have some football games we need to talk about. But before we can get into all that, I'm going to just go down the line, let you all kind of tell the people where they can find all of your content. Drew, I'll start with you, then Chris, then PG.
Hey guys, it's Drew England, the Under Official Review podcast. Me and my buddy Zach Merrill, we talk all things college football. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Google, Apple Music, all that good stuff. We're all about college football. We talk it all the time. Oklahoma stuff, Ohio State stuff, but all across the board. We love doing it. And thanks again, Ty, for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know, man. It's a different look, huh? That's a different look.
I was like, Ty, where's the hat at?
It's only the second stream I've ever not had a hat on. Yeah. But I also have a haircut now.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know you had hair like that, bro.
What'd you think my hair looked like?
We'll talk about it.
It's like a unicorn.
Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards. Hey, Chris with a K on Twitter, Horns Down Podcast, at the Horns Down Pod on Twitter. You guys can find us wherever you get your podcast at, and also you can find us on Twitter as well. Horns Down Podcast, like, subscribe, all of that. Yep.
Yeah, y'all know where you can find me. I just got one thing to say. Lose on, baby.
Yeah, that's tragic. That's tragic. And we're going to get into that, but we have to at first start with the playoffs this weekend, right? I mean, they were unbelievable. What better game to start with than, look, the biggest Cinderella story of 2022 in college football, TCU versus Michigan. In fairness, Drew, you picked TCU on the live. I picked Michigan. I don't remember what everybody else picked. I just remember you picking TCU. I definitely picked Michigan. Biggest surprise in this game. For me, this is the second time this season we've seen TCU's 3-3-5 absolutely shut down a powerful rushing attack. Now, I get it. There are differences between the Texas rushing scheme, which is a bit more finesse, a bit more stretching you out, a bit more speed, as opposed to the Michigan, which is hard-nosed, gut, like right up the middle. And it didn't matter. And you heard even players talking about, oh, well, TCU's 3-3-5, we're going to smash into it. And they didn't. That was so impressive. And for those of you that have been around the stream, I've talked about the 3-3-5 for some time. And Chris and I, we've had multiple conversations. And it's not that I don't like the 3-3-5. You just have to be perfect. Like, it is such a difficult defense to do what TCU did to Michigan. And it was beautiful. Drew, I'm going to pass it to you, man, because I'm from a coach's perspective, break this down for us, because numbers wise, that shouldn't have happened the way it did.
No, I mean, with the way that that Michigan's offensive line had just pretty much owned everybody this year, Joe Moore Award for the second year in a row. Gosh, I wish it would have been Tulsa. That would have made it even better. But no, it's the 3-3-5 is a great scheme if you have the players and the talent to be able to scheme it up. You have to have a really good nose guard, and you saw that yesterday. You have to have guys that can plug up the middle and take on some of those double teams, and you have to have linebackers like D. Winters and those guys flying downhill, making tackles in the backfield. They did not miss on those tackles, man. They were flying through. The guards couldn't get to the second level. And TCU created speed, and they hit on open field tackles and didn't miss that. And they had 2 pick sixes. I mean, they put that offense in behind the chains a lot of the situation and made J.J. McCarthy beat him. And he did on a couple plays. He did, but for the most part, TCU kept them guessing on defense. And Max Duggan, again doing Max Duggan things. Making enough plays for his team to win and keep you in it. But, yeah, that scheme that TCU has on defense works because of the players that they recruit to that scheme. So, and you saw it, man. D. Winters had a heck of a day.
Unbelievable.
He was one that jumped out at me. Just made play after play in the open field, in the backfield, and then he even had a pick six. So,
but Ty. Now. We were all watching the same game, but I'm going to flip it and say, Drew, I kind of tend to disagree with you just a bit.
It happened. How can you
I'm
disagree with
sorry, but Michigan's play calling at certain points in that game offensively, I don't know what was going on because they got cute whenever they got to the goal line. I mean, I'm just going to be quite frank with you. They got cute. They cost themselves a couple of touchdowns in which they probably should have won that game by 10 points, just to be totally frank with you.
And turnovers, that was the key.
Three
big turnovers.
Yeah,
the one at the goal line was enormous. That would have won the game, and then 2 pick sixes. So don't just give all the credit to TCU. They took advantage of that. But Michigan's play calling, I will agree there was a little sussy.
Because I'm just saying, Michigan shot themselves in the foot a handful of times yesterday. I mean, they just looked at the play calling. I was like, this is not typical. If your best player right now, Corum's out, obviously, but Edwards, I think we all would say Edwards is going to be a premier back next year, next season for sure. I'm just like, it's simple. Just hand it off. You don't have to get cute. You don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to do any of the stuff that you were doing. But right out the gates, they move the ball. They're down there on the goal line. I turn the game off, come back. It's no score. I'm like, what's going on? Call my uncle. Uncle's like, hey, they're getting cute with it. And then you just kept seeing some of those things sprinkled in over time in this game. And then TCU, like you said, I will agree with you on this. TCU made a lot of big plays, and let's just be real. They took advantage of the inexperience the inexperienced quarterback on the other side. McCarthy is talented. I said from the get-go, I always thought that McCarthy was going to be the guy that Michigan, needed to be at quarterback to get them to this point. But at the same time, you could just tell it was just a little bit that inexperience kind of really creeped up on him. He looked like this was his first year starting out there against them, and he made some incredible plays. But it's just as far as managing that game to get them where they needed to be. That's where somebody like a Cade McNamara could have maybe stepped in a couple of drives or a couple of times during that game to kind of stabilize things, or at least just having his presence on the sideline would have helped.
And this is the point that I made. Go ahead.
Let me just Dave Bezo, he makes a great point. Everyone knows Gary Patterson was a top defensive mind. I think that's even being kind. I think he's top 10.
Yeah.
Like for what he did for the nickel defense, Gary Patterson, Nick Saban, Pruitt. I mean, the intricacies these gentlemen layered into the nickel defense. And then you talk about Gary Patterson and Nick Saban in the early 2000s and the 90s, kind of visualizing what a dime package would look like. So man, top 15 easy for what he's done for the modern defenses. So many people run variations of what Patterson made famous. No doubt about it. Love this point. I'm so sorry to cut you off. I just really wanted to.
I was just going to say, one of the points that I had going into this game was everybody was talking about how strong and how physical and how experienced Michigan was in these games. But Michigan now has lost 6 straight bowl games. And that was the point that I was trying to make, was Michigan hadn't done anything when their season has been, quote, on the line. Yes, they've beat Ohio State the last 2 years, but when they get in bigger moments, they crumble. Jim Harbaugh crumbles. And I thought that was going to be something that TCU could take advantage of, because TCU had nothing to lose in this game. If they were going to lose, if they lost the game, everybody thought they were going to do that anyway. So they came out and pedaled to the metal and said, hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's put it all out there. And that's why I thought that TCU could win this game, because just the confidence that they had coming in, that Michigan really had all the pressure on them.
Yeah. PG, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan was the better team, I thought, coming in. And this is just another typical Jim Harbaugh performance, I feel like. He can't go out there. He can't perform in the big games. And for so long, I felt like Michigan fans have been saying, just wait. We get to the playoffs. We'll win a championship. Well, you've been to the playoffs twice now. Last year, you got smoked by Georgia. And this year, you lose to a TCU team that, I mean, are we really sold that TCU is one of the 2 best teams in the country?
At this point, I'm done betting against them.
Yeah, I mean, you're done betting against them. But my other head scratcher was, and I think this is something that even I will admit that I missed, I think we all overlooked the schedule that TCU played versus what Michigan played. Like, TCU's schedule, I feel like, was pretty brutal in terms of the teams they had to play. Michigan, they had to play Okay, a good Iowa defense, but you still let them score 14 points. Then you had to play Penn State, but again, that's a head coach that really can't win big games. And then you beat Ohio State. Those are the only 3 games I look at and go.
Well, they struggled against Illinois.
Exactly. And then you go look at what TCU did. They had to play at that time a ranked Oklahoma team, and if Dylan Gabriel would have been in the game, it would have been a much different game than what the score ended up leading out to be. You had to play an undefeated Kansas team, who at the time was, I think, one of the hottest teams in America. Then you had to play a top 10 Oklahoma State team. Then you had to play a top 25 Kansas State team. And then at the end of the season, you have to go to DKR Stadium and play Texas. And then you had to go to Baylor in Waco. And then you play Kansas State again in the Big 12 championship, where, yes, you lose that game, but no, I don't think anybody was really sold that you didn't belong there. So looking at the schedule, TCU, I felt like should have had a little bit more love in this game than what they had.
Yeah, and then one of the reasons I even said was they slowed down probably one of the best running backs in the country and Bijan Robinson, and I thought that they could have some success again doing that. But did I expect them to come out and really look like the better team in this game? Honestly, no, but that's the way football is sometimes.
Well, and they talked about it today on College Game Day, and I liked what they said. I can't remember who said it, but one of them said it, and they basically said Max Duggan knows who he is, and he ain't afraid to go out there and just sling bombs. And that's what makes TCU dangerous, is because he doesn't care about the stat sheet. He'll just go out there and throw it 30, 40 yards and hopes the receiver comes down with it.
So I'm a piggyback off of that, but slightly in a different way. Still not a big fan or believer really in Max Duggan, but I will say the Riley brother that's over there, not Tebow, but the other Riley brother, right? So Riley is the one who really, in my opinion, Riley is what won them that game yesterday. He took advantage of that zone. They would not get out of that damn zone. And those wide receivers, we always talk about Garrett Riley running basically the same offense as his brother with his own little spin on it, right? Yep. What does Lincoln Riley do? When we had CeeDee Lamb, what did CeeDee do? What was CeeDee known for? CeeDee would just sit there right in the middle of that zone, and then he get all that yak yardage, right? That's what they were doing yesterday. It wasn't anything different than what they've been doing all year. They saw that zone. They saw that Harbaugh would not get out of that damn zone, and they just took and they gashed him. It didn't matter who it was, whether it's Savion Williams or it was Quentin Johnston or whoever the hell it was. Tay Barber got loose a couple of times. I mean, it was just one of those days where they said, all right, so you're going to stay in the zone. This is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to find all of these gaps and these gashes, and we're going to sit right there, and we're going to work the field. And, I mean, they were just slinging it all over the place. But I think Garrett Riley needs to be praised a lot for not only just the play calling, but the execution as well, and just knowing where the weak spot of that defense was, because they were able to exploit that. I mean, every zone look that Michigan threw out there yesterday, it didn't really work.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the Riley brother that won a playoff game, right? Yeah. Okay, I got you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I liked how you talked about the yak yardage thing, because really there's a good formula to beat Georgia, and it's to just run bubble screens. If you run bubble screens, like, you've got Georgia on the ropes, because that's what
that, or just give your quarterback time to throw it.
Well, yeah, I kind of disagree. I think if you want to beat Georgia, you got to test them vertically. The last thing you want to do is test them behind the line of scrimmage and let those safeties and corners run downhill at you, because then they're coming. But the one way we've seen offense is be able to test Georgia. Now, we haven't seen anybody put all the answers together. Whether TCU can do it, TCU can test them. Can they put together the answer? I don't know.
Yeah.
If you can beat them on the outside, you have a shot.
And you cannot turn the ball over.
You can't. Well, you can't make mistakes. Kirby has that team way too disciplined, man. They're a well-oiled machine.
Kirby's going to run the football too, and he has a bunch of backs, whereas Michigan was basically playing shorthanded yesterday. He has a plethora of backs, and he's going to run the ball. And I think one of the difference, what will make a huge difference in this game, it's not Stetson Bennett's arm, but it's his mental, and it's how he's going to manage this game. There were a couple of times, especially early on in that Ohio State game, and I know we're not there yet, But just looking ahead to the matchup between TCU and Georgia, there were a couple of times where you're looking at Stetson like, damn, you missed the play. You always make the right play. In that game, especially early on, he just wasn't making the right plays. There were a couple of
uncharacteristic mistakes.
Yeah, on some of the RPOs, it was like, damn, dude.
What a comeback.
Back is running wide open down. There's nobody on that side, but you're keeping it. And so it was just a couple of things where you're like, damn, Stetson, you usually make the right play. Yeah. That's the reason why you're Kirby Smart's choice.
But
let's all be real. Jake Fromm was kind of sort of the outlier in a sense, but in my opinion, since he's been there, I mean, and Kirby Smart loves a game manager more than he likes a guy to go out there and just go win a game for him, right? He wants
you let Justin Fields transfer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't sit here and tell me that Jake Fromm is a better quarterback than Justin Fields. No way.
No.
Yeah, that was always odd to me. Here's not to defend it, but in a little bit of a defense of Kirby. The only thing, and I wasn't in the building, I just have to wonder if his mentality is, hey, look, I have my defense. I know what this is. This is the offense I want to run, super pro style. As long as I can get from point A to point B, I have someone that can read a defense right now. I'm ready to go. That's the only thing I can think. Now, in terms of ability, I don't think you'd ever meet a Georgia fan that would argue Fromm is a better quarterback than Justin Fields, but that's the only thing I can think in that. Now, that being said, talking about TCU against Georgia, Quentin Johnson is a tough matchup for any DB in the nation.
Well, Ringo.
Well, I mean, Ringo's he's good. He's a damn good DB, but it's just those TCU wide receivers, man. I don't think they've gotten the love. Darius Davis is a dude. He is as dangerous as anybody. Yep. Quentin Johnson is a dude, as dangerous as anybody. I mean, like, look, as good as Marvin Harrison is, these TCU wide receivers, they are really good playmakers as well. I can't find the comment, but someone said Georgia's secondary was exposed. I don't know that I can say that they were quote unquote exposed, because we've seen that be the one recipe to test Georgia all year. Yeah. Test them vertically. Saturday showed us you have to be perfect to beat Georgia. You cannot take a drive off. You cannot take a few plays. They have built this to where you got to be perfect. And personally, I think Ryan Day got a little conservative.
Kicking a couple field goals really hurt them. And then obviously, I mean, everybody's going to talk about the targeting play, but I don't think that was the biggest thing in the game. The biggest thing in the game was the chunk plays that Georgia was able to get on Ohio State's defense.
Yes. That's the
Smith
biggest.
Went off 3 catches for 145 yards. He had 47 yards a catch and allowed Georgia to get theirself down the field. And the chunk, I think there was 5 or 6 plays, I think I broke it down, was what really cost Ohio State, and their defense didn't make as many adjustments as obviously Georgia and their defense did. But yeah, and even Zach, we talked about it on our show. If you guys go back and look at ours, and we broke down the game, as Zach even said, yeah, that was a targeting. Yeah, it was a weird call back and forth, but the plays that really hurt them was the chunk plays that they gave up against Georgia. So,
Ty, I think that the game, I think there's 2 key things to watch as far as Georgia defensively. And I think the first is the pre-snap motion. Okay. I saw K-State against Bama do the same thing that they did to us. And I saw TCU do the same thing to Michigan that they did to us. They're always motioning that H-back, tight end, or just somebody over there on that side overloading you and basically just saying, okay, if you're going to cushion us and play this zone or give us these looks right here, we're going to exploit that with simple out routes. We're just going to throw those swing routes and pick up those yards and pick up the yardage. So the thing is Georgia going to be physical with these wide receivers? Are they going to actually press? That, to me, I think that was kind of the quick fix, and I think that's what you could have done and should have done against Ohio State. But my thoughts are that the game plan against Ohio State was C.J. Stroud is not mobile. And so with him not being mobile, we can rush forward and send guys back. run a zone and be able to play our clouds and everything right, and be able to just, hey, we'll fight it out that way. That didn't work. CJ Stroud was making he made some plays that night. I mean,
he's not mobile in the sense that he doesn't choose to run it. He's got the
He can
ability
take off
to
and
take
run
out.
though when he needs.
Yeah.
No,
But
I
is
agree
he-
with you. He's a pass first guy. Absolutely.
Yeah, no
But
doubt.
I think just like with Ohio State, like I said, and Ty, I've said this before, if you go back to that Penn State game like 2 years ago, Penn State came out there, even though they got beat by Ohio State, but they did something that a lot of people were scared to do, and that was get up right in the grill of those Ohio State wide receivers and be physical. Knock them off the line. You be the aggressor first. And so that's what I think you're going to have to do against TCU, is actually be physical with their wide receivers. Their wide receivers are tall.
Oh, you got to.
Yeah, you have to be physical with them. You can't just let them go out there and just gash you in a zone, or just, basically say, yeah, I'm going to just, stay with you. You got to be physical, and you got to be willing to, if you're getting, burned, you got to be willing to take that penalty and live to play another day instead of giving up a touchdown.
Yeah, it's Hummus. I think that's a very accurate description.
Yeah.
He's got the speed, he's got the mobility. He just doesn't do it a whole lot. Bryce is kind of the same. I mean, they're both quarterbacks who they'll escape the pocket, and their eyes are glued downfield. I mean, they are wizards in that pocket. It's unbelievable to see. Now, let's transition. We talked TCU, Michigan, but that wasn't the only game. We had another game, Georgia taking on Ohio State. Now, this was one that I think pretty much everybody had picked Georgia to win this game. I picked Georgia to win this game. But like we said, it was a game where whenever we were talking about it, Savage Dog, I don't think he's in here right now, but whenever we were talking about, I knew that Ohio State, out of the teams in the playoff, or at least out of Michigan, Ohio State had the recipe to at least test Georgia. You have to have great wide receiver play to test Georgia. That's just what we've been proven. You look at the teams and the offense that cooked that Georgia defense. It was when Alabama's offense was at full strength. Actually, they were at decently close to full strength with Bryce. That's the biggest gash we've seen on a Georgia defense, like a true full strength Georgia defense. If you don't have transcendent wide receiver play, you're going to be in trouble. That's what Ohio State has. They got great wide receiver play. So we knew that there was a chance. I think people are impressed with how good Ohio State did against this Georgia defense. I mean, they hung points on them. They hung a lot of points on them. CJ Stroud went out there and did his thing. But I think also this is something I've been saying all year. I don't think people really understood how efficient this Georgia offense is. When they get going, they are very efficient. And look, we can talk about Stetson Bennett, and he's been fantastic. You can't take anything away from the young man. All he's doing is going out there and playing winning football. I don't know what else you want him to do. Yeah. He's putting his team in a position to win.
Game as a starting quarterback
against Bryce, against a transcendent, a generational talent. That's the game he lost against a generational talent. And
he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. I mean,
they got revenge. Right. So 1-1. No question. Todd Monken needs a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Monken has been on fire as an offensive coordinator at Georgia. I think the offense he's calling has been so efficient, so on key. Brock Bowers is maybe the biggest mismatch in all of college football. That tight end room is the biggest mismatch in all of college football. I was surprised at how this game went down. I wasn't surprised at the result. Drew, give me your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, that was something. One of my keys was going to be is can somebody other than Marvin Harrison Jr. make plays, and we saw that. And Emeka Egbuka came out, made some plays. Tight end when he was Stover getting knocked out of the game didn't help them a ton. Their running game did enough for them, but CJ Stroud, man, I was even texting Zach during the game. I said, dude, he's going to will this team to a win. He was not going down without a fight, and we probably saw the best game out of CJ Stroud in his whole Ohio State career. Did everything he could to win, but like I said earlier, I just think the chunk plays that Ohio State's defense gave up was just too much. And then you did a good job with isolating their running game and making them more one-dimensional. But then in the fourth quarter, you started seeing them get balanced, and then Brock Bowers getting involved there and making some big catches down the stretch, you weren't going to keep him at bay for the whole game. He was going to make a couple plays, and that's what they do. They do enough and are just fundamentally sound to where they're going to, not break. And they're one of the teams that has the most experience. They've won the national championship. They've got guys in there that are not going to be scared of the moment. And, Smith, I talked about him earlier, 3 plays, including the 76-yard play that was, too much for Ohio State. And, everybody wants to go back to the targeting call. It is what it is. But Georgia, again, that's why
the targeting call didn't account for the way Georgia gashed them in the fourth quarter.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, it's the same thing I say whenever people talk about the national championship and they say, well, at Jamison, but we dropped a pass in the end zone, 2 passes. And so the opportunities were there. So forget the injury. They still had a chance. They didn't take it. Georgia won. Good on Georgia. Much like this game. The targeting, non-targeting, that's a discussion for a different time. That doesn't account for the gashing. Now, Chris, before you go.
Go ahead.
I just have 2 quick comments I want to say before you go. The man writes you, this is the exact point I was talking about in my Alabama K-State video. Whenever you say Brock Bowers took the attention away from Arian Smith, who went off, this is the exact point I was making in that K-State video where I said teams can pay so much attention to Deuce Vaughn that Malik Knowles kills you, right? That some of their other pieces kill you. And Alabama could not fall into that trap because it's easy to think that offense is all Deuce Vaughn. It's not. And Georgia did that beautifully. Great point. The other thing I will say is, where is it? I had that I can't find the comment. Go ahead, Chris.
That's all I was gonna say. They had their chance to win. I'll pass it to PG.
Quite frankly, I think Georgia got lucky. I don't think there's any way around it. I don't think they played up to their potential, and they got lucky that an Ohio State kicker couldn't put it together at the end. I mean, I think it simply comes down to that. We could have had an Ohio State TCU national championship and probably had the most parity within the playoffs that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a great playoffs, and not to be that guy, I think this is a great reason to keep it at 4 teams.
No.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Here's why. Because if it's not 4 teams, then Bama's in. Nothing that happened yesterday matters.
Yeah, but what happens when, all these conferences expand and, you've got 2 Big Ten teams that are undefeated and 2 SEC teams that are undefeated? You're going to only put in the 2 Big Ten and 2 SEC
because
teams?
they play each other in the championship. So you can't have 2
teams. Yeah, but you're going to get to the point where there's so many teams that you can't play everybody, even in a championship game.
Well, that defeats the point. If you have 2 undefeated teams, then
unless you're going to have a conference tournament to decide the conference championship.
No, I mean, I don't think you'll ever see 2 undefeated teams from the same side of a bracket. Right?
I don't know. I think the college football playoffs has to be expanded because this is the first year that they've gotten, I think, all 4 teams correct. I don't think.
I think they've gotten them correct almost every year.
Yeah,
because that's because Bama's been in it.
No, it's because they've gotten the correct teams.
I would agree with you, Ty.
No, it's nothing to do with Bama.
They've gotten the give me, like, PG, you said that. Give me one example of the years past where you think they missed. No, really, seriously, I want to hear your thoughts because that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so I mean, if we're supposed to be looking at the 4 best teams in the country, not just solely based off your record, which is what it seems like, and not solely based off the conference that you play in, which is what it seems like, and things like that, then in 2020, I think Oklahoma finished as one of the hottest teams in the country and potentially could have won a national championship. But because they had lost 2 games early in the season due to people being out and stuff like that, they don't get, the benefit of a doubt.
Well, no, they got the benefit of the doubt, and they failed. They had the regular season. So did they have the opportunity to make it in? Yeah, and they failed.
The argument that I will always make is, teams will have injuries or something of that, and I don't feel like we should,
That's a part of the game.
Yep.
That's like now what are we going to do? Extend the season 5 more months to account for a starting quarterback who goes down and put the whole season on pause? Like that's a part of it. Bear Bryant has a legendary quote: "To win a national championship, you have to be good. You have to be lucky. You've got to be lucky."
Yeah, I mean, The thing is, though, expanding the playoffs, I don't think it really extends the season that much. I mean, I think the answer is quite simple. You cut down the regular season and, cut out 2 of your non-conference games, make it 10 conference games.
That could work.
And then expand your playoffs. The thing is, if these kids want to go play in the NFL, you're going to have to play more games when you get there anyways. So, you know what? If you have to add on, they're making money now.
Yeah, but they're getting paid to play football. They're not getting paid for their name, image, and likeness. And I understand that might seem like it's not a distinction, but it is, because in the NFL they're able to profit from name, image, and likenesses as well. So they're getting paid to play football.
They also can do commercials and all that jazz and whatever they do and stuff like that. But for your point, in 2020, as much as I would love to say Oklahoma deserved it, we would have got our ass handed to us.
Y'all would have gotten dragged.
Yep.
I mean,
no question, no
devastated. Like Devontae Smith may have gone for 400.
Yep.
He went for almost 300.5 against Ohio State.
We couldn't have stopped them.
I just use that Oklahoma team as an example.
I
know there's other teams like that Oklahoma team that you could use in other years. Yeah. I'm just saying, I think an expanded playoffs would be good for college football. My honest opinion about it is these 2 out of conference games that allure, in the SEC, I think it's you guys have 4, so 3 out of conference games where you just schedule cupcake teams. I don't think that's good for college football. I don't think that's good for my team. I would rather see one formidable.
Those teams that normally don't get the exposure and the money for this, they have an opportunity to continue to build their program. And that's why they do what they do, is because some of these small market teams, and I have plenty of friends, I have friends that coach at those schools and that want these games. They're not going in there saying, oh, well, we're just going to collect a paycheck, but they're going in there to try to improve their facilities, improve what they're doing, because at the end of the day, if you're a high school football player, you want an opportunity to play at the next level, and some of these schools are that for some of these kids. And so I think for some of these games as a whole, it definitely helps college football out.
Well, then, I mean, what you need to do is you either need to split up the Group of 5 and the Power 5 into 2 different divisions of football, and the people who don't make the playoffs in the Power 5 go to a bowl game to play the Group of 5 teams, or Group of 5 teams can play Power 5 teams in the spring.
So here's one thing, like, because I hear you don't like the playing of non-conference games that you think
it doesn't
are weak.
matter.
Well, hold on. No. PG, let me go. Let me go. Because I hear your point, but I'm gonna tell you why it's irrelevant. So you think like, oh, well, Bama's going to play the Citadel and we're playing whoever, right? Here's the thing, though. Everybody points to that game. They don't point to the fact that Oklahoma will open up the season against UTEP, who, I mean, UTEP, the Citadel, toss-up, and Bama opens up the season against Florida State.
Oh,
how about they open up the season against a Pulse, and then the Big 12 can talk about, oh, well, the SEC doesn't play anybody.
I hate going to those games. I hate going
when Texas was playing Tarleton, or when TCU was. This is what the Sonny Dykes thing. I got it. When TCU was playing Tarleton, Bama was playing Texas. So what are we doing here? Are we just cherry picking when we're going to have rage on the schedule? Or are we
in the schedule? It doesn't matter if it's at the beginning or the end. Everybody's still doing the same thing.
Technically, if you play your harder teams in the beginning, you're more likely to be banged up and not have a full team by the end of the year.
Yep.
Yeah, but the Alabama's not losing to the Citadel. I mean, that's here's my deal. I don't agree that Oklahoma schedules these teams either. I don't like going in September when it's 100 freaking degrees in the stadium.
That's fair.
To watch us play UTEP. I would much rather go watch us play USC or somebody as the first game, in our out of conference game. And I think a lot of OU fans would too.
That's fair.
My deal is, and this is what pisses me off about it is, Oklahoma's going to the SEC and Oklahoma State doesn't want to continue this rivalry because they want to schedule an Arkansas Pine Bluff and they don't want to schedule OU in that slot. Grow a pair of balls and come play Oklahoma every year.
Well, I do think that should be mandatory. I think that one thing the NCAA should do is they should make it to where your rivalry games maintain. Even if conference
exactly. What if it was, instead of doing all those out of conference games, you had one out of conference opponent that you could pick every year that you could just schedule, and it has to be a formidable opponent approved by a committee or something. So you put them out, a while. So anyway, so you have that, and then your second one that you have is a rivalry game. So Colorado and Colorado State, Iowa and Iowa State, Kansas and Missouri, teams like that, games like that would matter. And that's 100% possible because it's going to get TV ratings.
Yep.
You can't tell me that they won't go for it because, no, those games get TV ratings. People would have tuned in for Kansas and Missouri this year. Missouri just chickened out.
That's but Chris, before you go, Hank, but you got to stay fresh throughout the beginning of the season because you had a bye week in week 2. So what are we doing here? It's selective rage at its finest when we're talking about the SEC schedule.
We just would have been exposed sooner in the season then.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in and just say, I think one thing that you're kind of discrediting is the fact that really, let me preface this. The only flaw with the non-conference matchups and different things like that is just the simple fact that we schedule those games out so far out.
That's fair. That's a very fair point. Because
you got to think, like, we have Clemson, we had Georgia on the schedule. Shit happens, and I mean, I'll excuse my language, Ty, but I think the thing to remember about this is the fact that a few years ago we played UCLA. UCLA was supposed to be that game, but we scheduled that years before that, and we can't help it that UCLA was basically in year one of the Chip Kelly era, and so they weren't really that good. Hell, Dorian Thompson or whatever, he was a freshman that game, and so I mean, you just can't really account for some of those things. So a lot of the matchups that you're getting, like, let's be real. That UTEP team that we played this year was different than the UTEP team last year. That UTEP team and UTSA were, I mean, hell, a lot of people were arguing that they should have had game day last season because they were both, I think, coming to that game, I think UTSA was undefeated and UTEP was like, 8-1 or something like that. Never happened before. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where you put some of those games on your schedule, and from the outside looking in, yeah, it looks like a cupcake. But years ago, you're playing these programs because you feel like these are adequate matches.
Now, in fairness, the Citadel is always a cupcake.
Well, look at last year.
In fairness, the Citadel is always a cupcake.
Unless they play Clemson.
Well, look at last year. We played Tulane and almost probably should have lost.
Yeah.
Let me get this comment real quick. The man right here says only 10% of players get NIL deals, so stop trying to prevent them from getting a monthly stipend as if the money is coming out of your pockets. Why are y'all fighting hard for the schools to keep billions? Thanks for the $10. I don't think you're going to find 4 people who are probably more pro NIL, and we've even said we think, or I have at least, I have said I think that the ultimate answer here is you're going to have to give teams from the NCAA or from independent governing body an X amount of dollars that they are allowed to spread out through their team. Basically a salary cap for college football. If we're after fairness, that's the fairest way to do this.
Well, and that's why they're trying to come up with these collectives for each university is to try to make it as fair as you can across the board. Now, where I have everybody should get a piece of the pie, but some people don't get as big of the piece of the pie because of the programs that they are in making more money. So it wouldn't be fair to say, okay, well, Caleb Williams deserves the same amount of money as a men's gymnastics guy. Just doesn't work that way because Caleb Williams is why people turn on the TV and watch USC football right now.
Now, do you think you could do like a salary cap plus NIL to kind of help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody should deserve a piece of the pie, but I don't think it should be all equal pieces of the pie.
I mean, that's fair. That's certainly fair. I'm sorry, Chris. I didn't want to let a donation
go ahead,
slide. But I do want to hear your thoughts. Georgia versus Ohio State, kind of focusing back in on this. Mm-hmm. Where were you most surprised in this?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Where was I most surprised? I was surprised that Ohio State was able to have the success that they had in the air. To be honest with you, knowing that that's what their offense is pretty much predicated on, and they're shorthanded on their running back. So, given all those circumstances, I shouldn't have been. I should have known that they were going to be extremely pass happy. But the success they were able to find. And it wasn't like Ryan Day came out there with exotic looks or anything. He just lined them up and he just ran what he ran. I mean, they were running slouts. They're running They're just running down the field, and I mean they got the matchups that they wanted. I mean, I think the one exotic look was the wide receiver when he lined up at H-back and basically, when he caught that touchdown. But to me, it was just surprising to see that them have that much success against that Georgia defense. Defensively for Ohio State, I wasn't really that much surprised because if you take some of their patented plays, the sweep with Bowers, the little bubble screens, jailbreak screens, or just their motions with what's that wide receiver's name today? Not Smith, but the other kid. Yeah. If you take that stuff away, then you kind of make them be honest. And the thing about it is that I think Ohio State is finally turning that corner of getting that guy on that defensive line that they usually have. The Nick Bosa's, the Chase Youngs of the world. I think that I can't say his name, but number 44,
JT Tuimoloau.
Yes, he's starting to come into his own.
He's looking good. Yeah.
He's starting to come into his own. And I really thought Jack Sawyer was going to really be that guy.
He's had a quiet career.
Yeah, that's what Zach was telling me about. They were really high on him coming into Ohio State and was going to be the next, big defensive line guy, and just never really, panned out. And he said that was probably his most disappointing recruit that he could really pinpoint was he was just supposed to emerge and just never really came on.
It's so interesting because if I'm not mistaken, didn't he get there and start making a ton of noise like in the spring practice? Like he was.
Yeah, he was. They were
unbelievable.
They were really like, oh man, he could be the next, Nick Bosa or something like that, and just never like maturated as like they wanted to. So.
AD Mitchell did show up. You're 100% right. 100%. Georgia's got some talented wide receivers, man. They do. A lot of people don't know about them, but they have them. They absolutely do. Now, Ron talking about Venables in Oklahoma, I do agree with this. And this is one of the reasons I've maintained, even through the record y'all had this year, you have to be optimistic. Ron says Venables is a better fit for Oklahoma. He's defensive-minded, coached in SEC territory, Clemson, and I grant that, no doubt about it, Ron, and hired a young top offensive coordinator. Riley and the SEC wouldn't have worked, not with his approach. He would have had to make modifications. Could he have done it? Maybe. I don't see why not. I mean, he's clearly a very bright mind in college football. Drew, I think you'd have better insight.
Ron said, just take top out of the sentence there.
Hired a young offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Let's just go with that for right now.
That's fair. Into his third year, though. He's barely 20. Yeah, no doubt, Hummus.
Those guys, when you're talking, and you're also talking about generational type guys, when you're talking about Nick Bosa and Chase Young and some of these guys, they did it right off the bat because that's just who they are. And, it's just like what we talk about the quarterback comparison at OU. The bar is already set way up there. And it's another example. Defensive linemen at Ohio State, receivers at Ohio State. Now you're starting to see here's the next one. And that's just the bar that has been set. Alabama, you have linebackers and DBs and, all those guys. That bar is just way up there for that type of talent. And so you'll see it especially these big time programs that, hey, this is the bar. And sometimes guys can't get up there. And that's no fault of their own. That's just the standard that these schools set and the programs.
Yeah, and there's still time, Hummus, to your point. I wasn't meaning to make it sound like, that story is written far from it. Fair point. Now, PG,
this Ohio State defense is going to be nasty next year in Jim Knowles' second year.
Yeah,
they're young, yes.
Interested in hearing from you, PG. One, let me know what you're thinking about Jim Knowles and this Ohio State defense, because there's a bunch of people who are questioning that. I tend to agree with you there 100% on Knowles. And then two, let me know what you're thinking about the Georgia-Ohio State matchup in general.
Yeah, so I'm like I said, I think I think Jim Knowles will have this defense second year, probably. If I had to guess, top 10 defense next year. Now I think they are losing still Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg as in their linebacker room because I think they're both seniors, but it's Ohio State. They'll always bring in talent to better fix that. But I am curious to see if Jack Sawyer can put it together under another year. And then that Tuimoloau. It's a tongue twister.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. It is, no doubt.
He's going to be a star too. And we started to see him kind of break out. And that's the thing, right? You started to kind of see this Ohio State defense click just to like at times during later in the season. You start to see it click. And that's why like I look at it and go, yeah, next year they'll be just fine. But when it comes to this Ohio State Georgia game, this is again, I think Ryan Day. I don't know if Ryan Day can coach in big games, just like Jim Harbaugh. I feel like he collapses. He does something kind of like Lincoln Riley, where he gets too conservative.
I don't disagree
I don't
with
think
you there.
conservative was the problem yesterday.
Interesting. I'm interested in hearing because to PG, to your credit, maybe not. Well, no, I have to agree, and I'm interested, Drew, to hear from you because you'll have a better insight than me on this. But when I watched that fourth quarter, conservative play calling is kind of what I thought Ryan Day did. So, from your perspective, what were you thinking?
I just started. I mean, obviously, the big one was when Marvin Harrison Jr. went out of the game.
I mean, that's a hit, no
an extra piece for Georgia to not have to worry about, and so they could really key on especially Mbuka, and they really kind of shut him down and made Ohio State more one-dimensional. That, and you just didn't see the running back experience that Ohio State didn't really have. They had guys that here and there carried the ball, but not in big situations. But I think the biggest key, and Ryan Day has won a playoff game too, by the way. So let's give him credit for that.
Very true.
But it's one of those things where, just like Lincoln Riley, you're going to have to, and giving Jim Knowles 1 year in this system, certainly next year will be a better, telling sign, is that can he improve that and make Ohio State into, like what you said, PG, could potentially be a top 10 defense. If they do that, obviously you're going to have, things offensively that are changing. CJ Stroud not going to be back, and some of the other things. So the teams that win championships, obviously, yes, play defense, but they play a great style of complementary football. If you look back, Georgia last year, Alabama in the past, Clemson, their offense was unbelievable, and I think it got overshadowed a little bit because of the way Clemson was able to shut people down on defense. You see really good complementary football. You don't see offenses putting their defenses in bad situations, in holes behind certain things, everything like that, and then vice versa. You defenses come up with stops at key times, and everything like that. And I think with the teams that you've seen over, especially the last 10 years, play extremely good complementary football. And I think that too often than not, with even LSU, you go back in 2019, yes, they had an incredible offense, but Dave Aranda and that defense was no slouch at all.
It was not they get a lot of, I think people seem to remember that defense.
That was
as
one
just
of the
being
best defenses,
terrible, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
So,
people talk about it like it was just an offense, and I'm not saying that was the best LSU defense we'd ever seen, but it wasn't a bad LSU defense.
Were incredible playing defense over there.
I do want to hit this comment real quick. Steve says, thank you for the $5, Steve. He says, Michigan got exposed. Michigan isn't a top 10 team. Harbaugh should be canned. They got lucky against Ohio State and Penn State. Horrible coaching. I don't know if he should be canned, because I just don't know, if you're Michigan, who are you going to get that's just marketedly better?
Yeah.
It sounds like a Buckeyes fan, so that's why they would say that.
Well, look,
I would agree with that first part of that comment for sure.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to say. That being said, I don't disagree entirely with the comment. Just I don't know that he should be canned. I think they are. I mean, I don't know. But
I would argue that they didn't get lucky against Ohio State. Ohio State took a risk because Ohio State took a risk saying JJ McCarthy can't throw, so let's make him throw. And then Jim Harbaugh and the staff adapted and said, we're going to throw the ball.
Game in the fourth quarter, and then they just ran away with it there. That's what a lot of people don't want to give Ohio State enough credit for, is the game was a lot closer than the score.
Well, yeah, it was a lot closer than the score, but I felt like Michigan had a pretty good hand on that game the whole time.
They did, but how many bowl games has Jim Harbaugh won at Michigan?
I wouldn't know the record off the top of my head.
None.
0.
None. No bowl wins. No bowl
6
wins.
straight losses. So does he need to be canned? Certainly not. But I mean, it begs the question: why are you at Michigan?
Well,
Can you get over the hump?
if you ask Paul Feinbaum, I'm sure that he's having a field day with that today.
Hey, listen, I'll tell you this. If Jim Harbaugh can go out there and beat Ohio State again next year, that's why he's at Michigan.
Yeah, and certainly I'm not. I'm
No doubt.
Yeah, but at the same
That's all
time,
Michigan fans
I was
care
about
about.
to say that, Matt. Lincoln Riley is the same thing. Why are you hiring these big time coaches? Why are these athletic directors going out and hiring these big time coaches? They want championships. Why did Georgia go hire Kirby Smart to win championships?
I
will say this, and I thought about this.
Line.
I will say this. I thought about this the other night. Does Jim Harbaugh kind of remind you guys of Jimbo Fisher? Because Jim Harbaugh does kind of run an offense that he's kind of stuck to it. I think the only reason why it works is because it's the Big Ten. But when he goes outside of the Big Ten, it doesn't work.
I hear you, but the only reason I'm going to say no is because at least when I watch a Michigan offense, I'm like, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. I understand your identity. You're a power run team. When I watch a lot of Jimbo's offenses, I don't know what they are trying to be. So I don't holistically disagree with your point. I think you're certainly on to something, but the only reason I can't go that far, I don't know the identity of a Jimbo offense half the time. I just don't.
And the thing about it is with Harbaugh, these are the first 2 years that he's actually had competent quarterbacks.
Ron has the idea. Ron's got it.
You can't get that lucky, Ty.
Ty, we've talked a lot about this, but man, Bama played yesterday
they played their best game this season. Yeah. But that's the problem, Chris. That's the problem. It's the last game of the season. And now finally we have plays. I don't know if y'all saw the first touchdown they had. I almost had an aneurysm.
Yeah, I was like.
Did you watch the route combinations? He literally told all the wide receivers, go into the end zone and turn around and look at Bryce. And then after that, we finally started doing really good route modifications. But
things started to change and here's something. OU fans that I want you need to go back and watch that game. Next year, we're going to hear, obviously, there's going to be some roars around TCU, obviously. But K-State is going to get a lot of pub next year, especially with Will Howard, the way he's ran this offense. But yesterday, you saw that if you have a decent, better, good, or just whatever the case may be, pass rush, you're going to be fine against them. And, I mean, that was something that you saw. And a Ty, I'm sorry, but that Branch kid, oh, my God.
No, I like Branch.
I was like, man.
I've always said Jance isn't. Jance is the one who has had me. I've always said Brian Branch is one of the best players in that secondary.
You saw yesterday that, hey, you just press. Stop giving them cushion because early in the game, you guys were
my God. The same thing I was getting on to Oklahoma about the situational play calling. Alabama rolls out there on a 3rd and 3, and we have 7 yards of separation between the defensive backs and the wide receiver. And I'm like, oh, so you're just giving them a first down. Come on now.
Yeah. I mean,
that's ridiculous.
Literally. I mean, and Will Howard was kind of telegraphing a lot of passes too. You knew it was either going to Knowles or it was going to be a handoff to Deuce. It was nothing in between. And number 85, he kept getting loose a couple of times, but then you guys just started. I mean, after that first interception, I was like, okay, they're about to settle in. I mean, I don't know. You guys, it's like Pete Golding and Bill O'Brien said, hey, you know what? We got this today. We got y'all better.
We want our extensions. We want our extensions, so we're going to go out and ball out, you know?
Yeah.
Kansas State versus Bama is the typical 3-star versus 5-star game. You really get to see the talent difference between the two.
Well, the same could be said for Tulane and USC today.
Yeah.
It's coaching.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. Yeah, I would just say the coaching was better, which was crazy because it's not that often that you say Kleiman gets out coached.
Yeah, but he's going up against Nick Saban.
I mean that's fair.
Yeah.
If he's going to get out coached, it's one thing to get out coached by Nick Saban. You feel pretty good.
9 years ago today, Nick Saban got out coached. So
it does.
So
last year.
I want to pose and ask this question because I think this is an interesting question. Is it possible to win a national championship with an offensive-minded head coach instead of a defensive-minded head coach? And I don't mean like a offensive-minded head coach going out there and hiring a good defensive coordinator. Like with everything that we see across college football with Ryan Day,
Gus Malzahn and Auburn.
Lincoln Riley.
Gus Malzahn won it with Auburn.
Well, Gus was the offensive coordinator. Gene Chizik was the head coach.
Yeah.
Was Gus not the
He was the OC.
That's right. It was
Gene
Gene
Chizik
Chizik.
was the head coach.
You're right.
Yeah.
I'm always off on that one. For whatever reason, I always get that one mixed up. Thank you. Thank you. I always mess that one up. Okay, fair point.
It's possible, but has it happened yet?
Yeah.
I mean,
I just don't I just don't see it. And that's why, I love TCU and I'd love for them to win. I just think Georgia's going to end up taking it because defense wins championships. And if an offense could have won you a championship, well, Oklahoma could have did it 3 times.
And look, that's one thing I've kept saying. It's one of the biggest things I've just maintained. Offense can win you regular season games. When you get into the playoffs, you cannot roll in there with no semblance of a defense. You want to know why? Everybody in the playoffs can play some level of offense. Right? Like they can do something. Hank or Urban, you're right.
I mean, but with Oklahoma, I will say this, even though I love my Sooners, but I mean, some of those defenses that we had with those, I mean, just amazing. Even though we were offensively, we were historically good. Defensively, we were historically
like polar opposite. Right? It was wild.
Like, what the hell?
That's actually kind of crazy that during the same time, y'all could go down in the history books of college football, and you'd be like, what are those books? What are the books like the Guinness Book of World Records? Yeah. Right? If they had one of those for college football, you'd go and you'd find Oklahoma. Best offense, then you'd flip the page. Worst defense. Oh, Oklahoma. Wait, same year? How does that work? And it robbed y'all of a lot. Steve says again, thank you for the $5. He says the Big Ten just sucks. Ryan Day is soft and gets too pass happy. Harbaugh is too stubborn with that damn conservative offense. Harbaugh is NFL bound. Now, Steve, I do have to wonder about Harbaugh to the NFL. If he flirted with the NFL last season, what's to stop him from flirting with the NFL this season?
I don't think Denver's going to take him. I don't think Denver's going to take him.
You don't think?
Well, there's other teams. No. It's about to be Black Monday here pretty soon. So,
however, I will say this: I'm interested to see who Denver goes after because they did say they were going to willing to be as aggressive as possible, and NFL teams have wanted Lincoln Riley before. Are they going to try to go after him again?
I was going to say here, watch out because my Arizona Cardinals are probably going to be shopping for a new head coach. So.
They might be shopping for a new quarterback, too, one day. They keep letting Kyler Murray get hit like that.
That's why they need a new head coach.
That's exactly why they need a new head coach. Now, Alabama, Kansas State. This game right here, Kansas State, it's wild, jumped out on Alabama, was playing really well, and Bama, through the second and third quarter, just shut that game down. Bryce went out early in the fourth quarter. So off of 2 quarters of work, Bama really just put that game to rest. Mm-hmm. Bryce was sensational. I think he had 2 or 3 throws that, I mean, it was one of those where you just throw it to open space and your receiver just does this and the ball floats down. I don't know what else to say about him, man. I keep saying it. I've asked the question 10 times and I'm going to ask it the 11th time. Chat, I need to hear from y'all as well. Has anybody ever seen Harry Houdini and Bryce Young in the same room? Because I haven't. And I'm not totally convinced that they're not the same person. Bryce Young is an absolute magician, and he just proved why he has been so special. I mean, he was incredible. The one thing I was encouraged here was the Alabama wide receiver room looked like they were coming along, which was good to see. And guys, I understand Kansas State. There are going to be people in here that, Kansas State, not a good Kleiman is a very good head coach. Very good. And K-State is going to be a team that you just don't want to give them opportunities. You want to eliminate all that. I think Chris said it great earlier. Whenever Alabama started playing more press, whenever they kind of realized, why are we giving y'all so much cushion? They really were able to change the course of this game. Drew, want to hear from you, man. What was your takeaway from Bama just absolutely eviscerating Kansas State?
Yeah, I thought early on, Kansas kind of took some shots and certainly, took a lead there and everything like that. And then I was, you were the biggest question I think you had to ask yourself going into this game. And some of that was kind of laid to rest when you saw Bryce Young and Will Anderson, some of these guys play, but how serious was Alabama going to be about playing in this game? And I think in years past, you had to ask that question because they've struggled in some of these games where they've not made the playoffs, And so for me to see them go out, put this together and look like the team that, and I even put this in the chat, I think this was the team that we thought we were going to see all year from Alabama. Consistent, great offense, good complementary football, like I talked about earlier. And yes, that young receiver room was something that really stuck out to me because you saw some guys making plays. Jahmyr Gibbs made a couple there, but yeah, Bryce Young, man, him and CJ Stroud looked the best they've looked all year. And
what a treat for us to be able to watch those two at the same time in college football.
And it was really cool. And to see Bryce Young and Will Anderson and those guys one more time with their team and what they said after the game was awesome. And everything like that. And it was just cool to see them go out on a great note. But yeah, that was something that I was, asking myself coming into this game. I was like, yeah, it helps that you have your two stud playmakers, but how serious was Alabama going to be in this game? And, how well were they going to show up? And
not even that it was a bowl game. It was a legitimate question for this Alabama team all season. At the point where you have 17 penalties, those are mental mistakes, right? Like, so it was a more than fair question. Chris, I want to hear from you on this, man. Bama versus K-State. What really stood out to you?
Like I said, what really stood out to me was defensively. I thought it was going to be interesting to see what Pete Golding had planned to counter that Colin Klein and Chris Kleiman, and Kleiman, offense or whatnot, because K-State is a team where all the way until the finish of the game, they're looking for whatever they're looking to exploit you. And so they come in there with their game plan already, but they're looking, okay, so that's what we need to do. So that's what we need to do. And they're just watching. They're just watching for those mental mistakes so they can take advantage of that. Early on, it's a ruckus crowd. One team is like, hey, we've been here before. Let's get this. We're going to, they came out a little bit lethargic. Other team was really riled up, fans going crazy. Okay, team settles in, right? The other team settles in. So it was just a thing for me. What stood out was just the pressure you guys were able to get on Will Howard. Will Howard has looked exceptional this year, but you guys were able to get a pressure on him. Branch stood out to me. Like I said, he poked out.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah, he was fast. His timing, matching up the snap count and everything. I mean, it was crazy that game. But just the pressure that you guys were able to put on Will Howard and that offensive line, but also just the adjustments that you guys made throughout the game. And where, like I said, some of the different pre-snap things or whatnot that K-State loves to do, you guys were ready for it. And like I said, not so much to start the game, but when the game finally settled in, it was kind of like, okay, we've seen this time and time again. This is where we need to be. This is where we need to be. And you saw some guys that didn't really get a lot of love, especially from you and Jess this year, actually show up and kind of show out. I thought they used Will Anderson the correct amount in that game. They didn't really need a lot of them. I thought the oldest kid, he had a pretty
and
good
he
game.
had a big game. And
Yeah.
when I went back and watched, I don't think I was wrong in the group chat. At first, I said I thought Otis was a little over-aggressive on that big Deuce Vaughn. It wasn't on him. Henry To'oTo'o, it was a great block by Kansas State, so I'm not blaming. But he paved the way for To'oTo'o, and they just had a great block, executed it well.
You saw battle out there. I mean, you just saw guys out there that you hadn't really heard. I wouldn't necessarily say heard from this year, but not in the way that they showed up on Saturday. And your wide receivers, you got help from them as well.
Well, that's what I've been telling you all year.
Yeah.
Talent is there. It's experience we don't have.
Yeah. I think Bill O'Brien finally stepped up as well and helped with some of the game management per se. The momentum, you guys got momentum in this game, and you really just took over the game whenever you had that pass to Jahmyr Gibbs where he picked up that block and basically took it for about 30 or 40 yards. And then after that, it was kind of like, okay, we're here now. Let's do this.
Were you just shaking your head in agreement about Bill O'Brien?
Bill O'Brien. This and the Auburn game are the two games where I look at some of the offensive play call. And I'm like, man, you are layering together plays cohesively. Like I thought look, credit where it's due. Bill O'Brien called a really good game.
Yeah, probably saved his job at Alabama, you know.
That's not. You
know. Yeah.
No, easy.
I would love for Bill O'Brien to come back to Alabama next year.
Yeah, just keep that train rolling.
PG, what were you thinking, man? Because you were really curious about this one.
Yeah, I was really curious with that 7.5 line. And then Kansas State showed me that they're not in the realm with Alabama. So I learned a couple things. Bryce Young is still good at football. Nick Saban can still coach. And Deuce Vaughn can play with the big boys.
Man, Deuce Vaughn had one big run. Tell me any other plays he made.
Boy, Drew, you.
No, I mean, hey, look, this is what I'll say.
A blind squirrel finds a nut. I'm just saying.
I agree with PG. I already knew that Deuce Vaughn translates to whatever type of brand of football you want to play. But I will say this though, him hiding behind those tackles and those big hog mollies up front did not make a damn difference. As soon as that Red Sea parted, you saw somebody coming down and putting the helmet on his head.
I'm gonna give y'all two names before we transition to the USC game, and I'm gonna let y'all say your pieces there. But here's what I'll say. Yeah, they did. No doubt about it. Deontay Lawson, number 32, had a great game.
Yeah.
He's going to be a starting linebacker next year. He looked like the best linebacker on the field.
That's a great point. Yeah,
and he's a freshman.
Yeah,
he's a freshman. He looked like the best linebacker on the field. Yeah. Number 2, Jahad Campbell, number 30, came and played. He's another guy to watch. He looked solid. I think Jaheim Otis is very good. The last name I'll give you is an offensive lineman, Tyler Booker, number 52, the offensive guard. I thought he played a phenomenal game. Thought he played really, really well. Super intrigued to see what the future holds, though. Damon Payne got involved. Good to see. He's been a name that Alabama fans have been wondering, former 5-star defensive lineman. Good to see him get involved. Chris Braswell had himself a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just very excited to see what ends up happening next year for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But, gentlemen, there's no better way for me to end this than giving y'all this right here. USC Tulane.
It's a good game.
Hey, I just want to say shout out to the Green Wave, you know. Hey, yeah, that man, look, I don't know. I don't know. Literally, the Grinch stole Christmas, but he didn't steal the Cotton Bowl. I tell you that, because it just got wild out there. Look, Ty, I gotta take over real quick. Okay,
no, all means, floor's yours.
This is what I had to say. Okay, USC fans, we tried to tell you. We know exactly how this feels. We know what it looks like as well, and you can see. Throughout that second half, in my opinion, it felt like OU Georgia all over again. Felt like they took their foot off the gas. It felt like, let's just be real, Caleb Williams, to me, in this game, looked more like Johnny Manziel than I've ever seen before, simply because he made a lot of backyard football type throws, and, those were some 50-50 balls. But I'll say this right here. They just were tougher down the stretch. USC was just way more talented. PG, this really goes to your point about the 3 stars versus the 5 stars. I mean, obviously you can say the 3 stars versus the kind of not most wanted portal guys. But at the end of the day, what you saw in this game was just, Tulane just basically outlasted them. And what's crazy to me, and I think something that will get glossed over, is the simple fact that both teams knew exactly what was going to happen, because they just played each other last year in Norman a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
You're sitting there looking at Will Fritz like, okay, hey, look, all we got to do is just weather the storm. We'll be fine. We've been here before. It's time to go win. Pratt played the same game that he played in Norman. He was getting hit out there. He was under pressure. He's getting hurried. He got his ass beat out there, but he kept getting back up. Then defensively, they just said, okay, we're ready for this GT counter. Run it. Please run it. We're going to stop it. You're like, man, y'all might as well just pass the ball because y'all have no run game. Y'all can't run the ball on this team. And it just got silly after a while. And then you just saw the lapse in the defense. You go out there and you get a score. You're up 45-30. And then you give – it's 4 minutes left on the clock. Make them work the field. Oh, no. You go and give up a touchdown in 2 plays and leave all that time on the clock. Again, we've seen this before. Then what happens? You come out there and you run GT counter yet again in your own end zone and get a safety.
Which at this point, anybody who knows Lincoln Riley knows to expect the GT counter. Like, it's almost like breathing at this point.
Well, and here's a point to look at too, was you saw that Caleb Williams was a little more healthy, but often, more times than not, you start seeing him pull that on the GT counter. He didn't do that tonight because they were one-to-man. They did not want him to run around. That's he improvised, he moved around and threw the ball, but there were times where he wanted to take off, and I don't think he wanted to because that thing may have went cattywampus again on him and popped. So I think Tulane knew that they were probably going to get a lesser version of Caleb Williams running around, which was a good thing. But, man, they just went out there, same thing with TCU, and said, hey, we got nothing to lose. Everybody thinks we're going to lose, so we might as well just go out there and then put together the same game plan that we did against Oklahoma last year and see what happens. And exactly, that's what I agree with Chris 100%. I think that's what they did. They just took the same game plan and said, hey, let's do it again. We should have won last year. I think we can do it again this year. And
same team, same scheme. The only thing that was different is that there was a Heisman Trophy winner over there who just, I mean, he made, even though I said it was Johnny Manziel-like, he still made some plays out there. You're just like, Caleb, that's silly, man. That's crazy.
Now, before PG, I pass this off to you, I do want to get to Steve's comment. Steve, thank you so much for another $5 donation. He says, my top 10 rankings agree or disagree. 1, Georgia, 2, Bama, 3, Ohio State, 4, TCU, 5, KSU, 6, Oregon, 7, Penn State, LSU comes next, 9, Utah, 10, Washington, Tennessee out with injury. Personally, Steve, look, I love Alabama. You got to put TCU up there. TCU has been an incredible Cinderella team. And let me preface it with this, Steve. One of the things we have a lot of discussion on this channel about is whether or not, like just college football playoff expansion discussion, right? Like we talk about it a lot. And for me, I couldn't be someone who says like, oh, well, I love the 4-team structure and then say we need to disregard the regular season. So Bama losing 2 games, that matters. It absolutely matters. Do I think Bama is one of the best teams in the nation? Yeah, I do. But that matters. It without a doubt matters, the regular season. So I think you got to put TCU at number 2. I mean, look, they're going and playing the national championship. And then if we want to put Alabama after that, we can have a conversation. But I think 10 Washington is, I have no real disagreements there. Utah. LSU, I mean, they beat the hell out of Purdue. That was wild. Did y'all see that?
Yeah,
I did.
They beat the hell out of that.
I'd rather not speak about LSU right now.
Yeah, LSU, man, they did good. I'm interested to see, moving forward what happens with them. So,
did you see the celebration they did?
Yeah.
Ironic.
They were having some type of party, huh?
Did you see it, Chris? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, when they all jumped on the bed. Ironic. Interesting.
Yeah, they were having some type of party, weren't they?
Interesting way to celebrate.
Acting some type of way, huh?
How would you know that? Interesting. PG, I'm going to pass it
Hank.
to you.
Oh, that's great. Hank, where's Florida State in that equation?
Oh, no, that's a very good point,
That's
Hank. No doubt about it. Florida State absolutely deserves to be. No, great catch. No doubt.
Yeah.
Florida State's got to be up there. Now, PG, got to pass it to you, man. USC Tulane. Go ahead.
Lose on, baby. Lose on. Listen, that's going to be every time Lincoln tweets out this, I'm going to tweet it back and go, lose on, baby.
How many bowl games have you not won?
Exactly. But no, I mean this was a classic Lincoln Riley performance. You're up, and then you give it up late. I don't really know what USC fans were expecting. Like, again, we tried to make the point that Alex Grinch was going to be awful. And this is just what Lincoln Riley does. I don't understand why all of a sudden USC fans are irate about this.
That's fair.
But I will say this, because I've been reading the boards. If you USC fans think you're going to go out there and get an elite defensive coordinator, you're wrong. Lincoln Riley will just go hire another scrub. That's how this works.
You know, this is the part that's wild to me, and we said this before, and I don't think it's. I'm going to say it live. I don't care. I was shocked when Lincoln Riley took Alex Grinch. That was the most surprising move to me personally. I thought he would elevate Williams to defensive coordinator, the cornerback coach they had out there at USC, the guy who held together.
Are you talking about Roy Manning?
No, Dante Williams.
Out
of
USC.
Yeah. The dude who held that recruiting class together for Lincoln Riley before he got there.
Good point. Yeah.
Because if Lincoln wouldn't have, I'm going to let everybody in here know one thing right now. If Lincoln wouldn't have retained him, Damani Jackson would be in a Crimson Tide uniform right now, and Bama would have had their 5-star cornerback last year. That's Dante Williams was key in that, in retaining a lot. I was shocked. The only thing, and guys, this might sound crazy, and if it is, please slap me down to earth. My only reasoning is you have a scapegoat. You have a scapegoat if you're Lincoln Riley by bringing Alex Grinch. When it doesn't work, you have somewhere to point and say, okay, well, as an offense, we scored 45 points. Our quarterback had almost 500 yards. Certainly not offensively fault. And then you look at Alex Grinch. That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
No, but see, that would be a good point if this was the only season this has happened. Lincoln Riley is known for
you're
never
not wrong. You're
playing defense. So
you're right.
I'm not going to give him the scapegoat pass because
you're right.
this is new.
Well, this is what he was trying. This is exactly why he went to USC too, was to keep trying to bolster his resume, because that's the only thing he has not accomplished is winning the big game. And hopefully now he might understand that, hey, I've really got to, set the tone and try to go out and fix this problem if I ever want to get over the hump and win this game. But at the same time, he's loyal to the guys that have stuck with him. I get that. I understand. That's awesome. As a coach, I can respect that. But at the same time, if you're trying to be the guy that everybody thinks that you are, and USC going out and here and paying you, that kind of money, you have to, at least have that, in the back of your mind that, I may have to look at my defensive coordinator situation moving forward.
And it's not good enough for them to just go out there and get the high 4 and 5-star guys, because he was getting the high 4-star guys here at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
He was getting that talent that everybody else wanted.
Yeah.
To your point, he said Mario Williams killed it. Yeah, 2 big plays that he missed, drop pass and where he slid down and where he could have kept his feet and got in the end zone. 2 big plays right there. I think, you could say that hurt them.
Can we talk about I do want to talk about this. Raleek Brown is going to be a dog.
He's going to be sensational.
As an Oklahoma fan, I'm sad we lost him. Out of all of the Oklahoma guys we lost, Caleb Williams and the recruit Leek Brown, that one hurt. McCutcheon and Mario Williams, so far this season, I haven't seen them make a big enough impact to say that.
Oh, Mario made a huge impact this year.
Yeah, he was what we thought we were going to get in the first year with him. I mean, he had a bigger imprint on that offense.
So
Look, at the end of the day, here's something that I think we're going to hear down the line. I think we're going to hear some USC fans. I think we're going to hear some other just college football fans in general just say, did we really see them having this much success in year one? And I think the overall opinion would be yes, because he's playing in the Pac-12. And I know that the Pac-12 got I didn't think he'd be this good
this year, to be 100% honest.
I didn't.
I thought he'd be much
He
improved.
brought with him, you know. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but I didn't think that you could
here's
take
the
that
thing.
much to the transfer portal and make your team that good. in
No,
one
but
season.
here's why I say that is because it's the Pac-12. Outside, nobody said, and no, when he went to the Pac-12, what did we all say here on this panel, Ty? We said, "Oh yeah, Utah's a tough
It's a
game."
much easier route.
No, we
Yeah,
said it's
no.
easier path, but we said Utah's going to be a tough game. We said, hey, it's not the Utahs and the Oregons that you're worried about that much. It's the Oregon States of the world and the Arizonas that they go down there and they play with for a while, and then they end up getting beat somehow because that's what he did in the Big 12. But you just saw just history repeat itself up there at USC. New surroundings, new facilities, new everything, smaller office, but at the end of the day, with Lincoln, it's still the same story.
So this is why I thought that they wouldn't be this good. I had them losing to Notre Dame preseason. I had them losing to Notre Dame. I had them losing to UCLA. I had them losing to Utah. So I had them at 3 losses before we ever even started talking about a Pac-12 championship or a bowl game. But in fairness, Chris, you're not wrong. Like everything you're saying is completely correct. I just did not think that we would see this big of an impact because of the lack of defense.
I would just like for USC fans to dial back their expectations a little bit, because
you're not wrong.
Like Oklahoma didn't have a good season. We went 6-7, but again, I can point to a lot of this being from the previous regime here at Oklahoma, because the season was coming regardless whether Oklahoma fans want to admit it or not. It might not have been a 7-loss season, but a 4 or 5 loss season was coming.
I mean, you were close to a 4-loss season last season.
I will say this. Just like Oklahoma has high expectations for winning, like it or not, USC is a blue blood, and they have high expectations for winning. And so I can see why those fans had that level of expectation and excitement, because year in and year out, USC expects to compete for national championships, and that's why you go out and hire Lincoln Riley and do this too. So I will defend them a little bit, because I understand football and I understand the expectations that, again, we talked about that bar earlier. USC is up there with some of the best
with Lincoln, yes.
Well, yeah. And I get that. I just want USC fans to understand the head coach you got, and to look at what he did here at Oklahoma and pretty much translate that to USC,
changes,
and that's what you are.
Absolutely.
This is what you are. You are an 11, 12-win team every year.
But I think that the argument could be made for people saying that about our fan base with Brent Venables. Because
the
look
thing
at
is,
how
we
high
don't know
our
what Brent, but we don't know what Brent Venables is going to be yet.
But in fairness, PG,
Riley is.
I had a lot of pushback from Oklahoma fans when I even made the analogy of, like, to Chris, and I would say, you can be the best litigator, but that doesn't mean you're going to year one, day one, be the best partner at your law firm. Right. I got a lot of pushback for saying that. Just saying, hey, he's never been a head coach before. I got a lot of pushback just for that.
And with the same point that you said about Lincoln Riley, we don't know that Brent Venables is going to go out and win the games and have the expectations that our fan base still has for him.
That being said, I do think Brent is a better fit for Oklahoma than Lincoln Riley. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And like,
sure.
It's
just trending that way, but we'll know in about 5 years whether it was or not.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, PG, because I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, 10 wins in playoffs. And I'm like, I had y'all at 9-3 for the season. And the reason I had that is I was like, well, Brent will have some new head coaching errors, as every new head coach who's ever been a first-year head coach will have.
Best way to put it is we were just emotionally high because Brent Venables is a program guy. We just got dumped by our ex-girlfriend. That's really what it is. We were just emotionally high, and we thought 10, 11 games, we didn't want to admit that we would take a step down.
And that's why I said this is
perfectly fair.
This is a huge off season for our program as a whole.
Now, I will say this, though. If this Oklahoma team looks like they did this year, next year, then all of a sudden we're going to start having some real conversations, because that's not okay. I don't care
No,
what year it is.
100% fair. And I think frightening makes a really good point here. And PG, it really bleeds into your point. Oklahoma has had a run of success for so long. It's almost like the expectation, right? Like, yes, Bama has been winning national championships, but Oklahoma hasn't had a losing season since when?
1998.
Like, come on. You know what? That doesn't happen in college football. Like college.
But that's why I've said,
but you're right.
through that
You're
this season that, I'm totally losing my train of thought here. I've said something all season. What have I said? This is my ADD kicking in. I just had short-term memory loss there.
We love you anyways. We claim you anyways. Yeah,
no. This is what I was going to say. We were blind to it, but as you watch the past couple seasons, Lincoln Riley progressively got worse. He allowed more points to be scored.
You
started to lose more games. Last season, you could have had, 4 or 5 losses?
Could have.
Could have. And then, listen, if he would have stayed, our portal exits last year would have been even worse, which means we probably would have had this kind of season.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. But it's one of those what ifs.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to say what if. You probably would have lost.
But you can't sit there and say 100% that would have happened, though. It's impossible.
No, you can't say with 100%, but I will say, you would have lost 4 or 5 games this year.
That still would have been better than schedule, 7.
With this Big 12.
And look, I don't disagree, PG. And Drew, you're certainly right. Like, there is no way to say. But, PG, the reason why I do tend to agree with exactly what you're saying is I got pushback from Oklahoma fans last year and looking at that team and being like, hey, something's not right here. Like, they're very good, but something just isn't clicking. And then at the end of the year, it was just kind of it just kind of ended up that way. But I don't know that I think OU loses 7 games with Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, I think it's probably 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, 4 I think is reasonable.
Because I think you lose to Texas. I think you lose to TCU. You probably lose to Baylor. And then you lose one more in there somewhere.
It's hard to say that. I'm sorry. Yeah. I know I'm just jumping back on here, but it's hard to say that simply because you don't know what Lincoln would have gotten in the portal.
Exactly.
That's fair.
Lincoln,
that's a very fair point.
Offensively, he would have been fine. He would have went and patched up that offense, and you would have still had Borns and Sawchuck, and you probably would have saw a lot more of
you would have had Raleek Brown.
Yeah, you would have Raleek Brown and a bunch of those kids already here, at least for probably 1 year, right, if he was going to leave after. But you would have had them, and then, like I said, Caleb Williams would have fixed. He would have fixed. I mean, a good quarterback would have made that defense look. We've seen Lincoln Riley with great quarterbacks and bad defenses, so it's just hard to really say that we would have had that many losses with him.
Apparently, somebody lives in my neighborhood and is stalking me.
Oh gosh.
Oh, so I guess you do live there, huh?
I do live in Yukon, yes. And I walk
PG,
my dog every single day.
PG lives in Yukon.
There we go. Well, guys, I think we've hit just about everything. I'm going to just go down the line, let everybody say their closing topics, and then we'll get out of here. Drew, I'll start with you, then Chris, then PG.
I just want to say this. Oklahoma is undefeated in 2023.
You are?
Hey, Ohio State can't say that, but,
Bama's undefeated too. All of our teams are undefeated.
Yes, all of our teams are undefeated right now. So, no, hey, it's always a good time to get on here and talk college football. Ty, once again, thanks for having me. If you guys have not yet, get this man some more follows. I know you wanted to try to get to 20K before the year, but let's try to get him at the end of January. Let's see if we can shoot.
That'd be wild.
So keep hitting that subscribe, bell, notifications. Ty does a great job. But if you want to find us, we are at the Under Official Review Podcast. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that. Our audio stuff is on Apple and Spotify. We talk college football, and we got some cool things coming up as we've partnered with the Winning Edge Sports Network and the Fanboys. So next year you're going to see us at some college football games and stuff like that as we're going to be doing some pretty cool remote stuff. So we'll be checking that out here coming up this year. So a lot of good things happening.
That's going to be awesome. That's going to be really cool to see. Chris, you got the Cowboy hat on. People might confuse you for a Texas fan this crisp Monday afternoon.
No. This only comes out when good things happen, you know? So
did you just flick the hat?
Look, guys.
He didn't he just pulled the flick. Oh my God.
Horns Down Podcast, you already know, at the Horns Down Pod on Twitter. That's where you can find us at. But what I was going to say is, hey, we got a limited series, a little two-parter that we're going to do. It's called Behind Enemy Lines with
cool.
Nino's Corner. Okay, so we're going to recap the Texas season, and then we're going to recap the OU season. So details coming soon. Check out the Twitter for all of that. It should be interesting. Always a good time with Nick, even though he is a Texas fan. Horns down. So yeah, definitely check us out. So you guys can find us anywhere that you get your podcast at, and then also Horns Down Podcast on YouTube. So definitely like and subscribe, and holler at us, man.
Yes, sir. PG, what about yourself? Other than being in Yukon, where can the people find you?
Yeah,
some people have found him already.
Yeah, apparently people have
found him. Yeah. Hey, I will say this: that guy said he was looking for a house. Don't buy a house in this neighborhood.
So watchers.
It's Rosh Coleman. I would not recommend it. But y'all can find me on YouTube, The PG Show, Apple, Google, or Spotify, just The PG Show, all one word. Or you guys can find me on Twitter at The PG Show _. We usually try to put out good content, but sometimes that doesn't. But yeah, talk a lot of Deion Sanders, talk a lot of OU football, Florida, some of those schools. So,
Frightening has a question for you, Chris.
Wow.
Why never index finger up?
Hey, our new thing is going to be lose on. That's going to be our new thing.
That should be our new thing, lose on.
Jeez.
Today is a holiday.
I played the 5th.
Yeah, here we go. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. We will be live Friday as we preview the national championship. That is going to be just a stream on its own. Yeah. I do have hair. It comes seasonally. This is only the second video live stream I've ever done without a hat. So, yeah.
Comment if Ty should go hatless for 2023.
Oh, we're going hatless for 2023. Hey, guys, there are some big changes coming. The studio's about to change. We're going to change the format a little bit. We're about to start doing more live shows, everything like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So until then, we'll see you, but I'll see y'all Friday for the live. That's it. Spinning Wheel of Doom incoming.